Hi, welcome. It's great as always to be with you. I'm sorry to be a bit late this week. I was actually traveling with fear and trembling, but I double masked, put on a visor, and pretty much held my breath the whole way. And I looked ridiculous, but I just figured I wouldn't care. My outgoing flight was on time and without incident. That should have been the warning. That should have been my cue that something was up. On Sunday, when I was scheduled to fly back, the flight was delayed and then delayed again and then delayed until 3 o'clock in the morning. At that point, the representative couldn't guarantee that the airline would be able to find a crew for the plane and offered refunds for those who did not want to gamble on a 3 o'clock a.m. flight. It was at that point that I decided to make alternative arrangements. It all eventually worked out, but I lost part of this week in the process. According to the airline, the delay was not due to COVID, but I will share with you that the decision to travel was very difficult to make, and I did not do so with any sense of ease. In fact, I was amazed at the numbers of people who were traveling and seemingly without any concern. At any rate, it is not my intention to bore you with the vagaries of travel, particularly my travel, except to perhaps help you in your own decision-making process, or to offer some perspective, which I am happy to do offline as well. But my experience is not unrelated to the thoughts I do want to share with you this week. Very recently, I had the opportunity to hear a presentation by an excellent psychologist, very insightful and thoughtful, by the name of Betsy Stone. And I think she is semi-retired. And her presentation was on some of the effects of living through this time of pandemic. Her talk was intended for clergy and the particular stresses and strains of continuing to serve during this time. But a couple of her insights were quite relevant and struck me as potentially helpful to many of us. She began by clarifying that this experience is, in fact, a trauma for most, although not all of us. For some, it has been a welcome respite from the trauma of having to face the world every day. For the great majority of those who have been living with this for over a year and a half, it has been a deeply distressing and disturbing experience. It has disrupted our lives, our routines, our work, our sleep. It has disrupted our social patterns, our interactions and relationships. It has changed the way we dress, shop, eat, exercise, play, and travel, or make the decision just to stay home. It has opened a whole new world of technology that to many of us to which we had access, but we didn't have need. And it has created a new vocabulary. It has changed the way we experience theater, concerts, movies, dance, sports, spectator events of all kinds, celebrations of holidays, special occasions, life cycle events, and it has transformed the synagogue and all places of worship that we have, are, and will continue to adjust and to accommodate, speaks to our strength, our resilience and determination, but does not change the traumatic nature of this experience. After identifying the pandemic as a trauma, she clarified that trauma never goes away. In this, it is similar to grief. Neither trauma nor grief, once experienced, never go away. I may have known that instinctively. Many of us probably do. But to hear a psychologist actually affirm that principle, that grief in particular, because most of us experience grief in some form, and that trauma never leave us, was really a revelation and an important insight going forward. Both of them certainly quiet and diminish in intensity, but any new trauma or loss triggers their reemergence. They will come out again. Any new loss, any new trauma just makes it more intense. She predicted that just as the depression became a defining experience in the lives of our parents and grandparents, so COVID will do the same for us, our children and grandchildren. This really crystallized it for me because I understand how the depression became a very real part of my parents' lives going forever, going forward until they ended, actually. As a personal example, I would share with you the following. I have a very difficult time throwing food away. I will keep it in the refrigerator for weeks until it is spoiled, and I have to throw it out rather than throw it away when it is still good. I did not live through the Depression. I was born many years after it was over, but my mother did live through the Depression. She spoke vividly of having to work to help her family and of how the Depression affected her education. She could not throw out food. I remember her saying such things as, "It's a crime to throw this out. It is perfectly good." We know from Holocaust studies that trauma is passed on from generation to generation. While we cannot know exactly what form that will take with COVID, we can assume that this trauma will be carried by all who experienced it, and then it will be passed down to future generations. While this is a sobering realization, I find that just knowing what to expect is comforting. It also opens up the possibility that knowing this will be ongoing, we might be able to alter in some way or to some degree how future generations process our traumatic experience with COVID. Before we take our first break to breathe, I would like to share one more of her insights. COVID brain is real. In other words, just like we experience grief brain, pregnancy brain, or postpartum brain, COVID brain exists, and we are not losing our minds. We are experiencing confusion, a kind of just befuddlement, just kind of people describe it as just feeling unclear, unfocused. We have an inability to remember what it is that we were just about to do. And we forget, especially many things, especially names. Interestingly, names flee even when we can see the person right in front of us. It's the proverbial, when you put the cereal box in the refrigerator and the milk in the cupboard, that's COVID brain. One of the funniest examples she shared with us was of the person who used her cell phone to stir the rice. That is COVID brain. It's just not feeling like yourself, not feeling like you're functioning at your accustomed or optimum level. That's grief brain, or those of us who have children, had children, that was pregnancy brain, postpartum brain. That is COVID brain. I'm sure there are other brains, as it were, that have to do with transitions and those kinds of things. At any rate, with that bit of anxiety relieved, I hope, let us take our first break to breathe. And we do that by assuming our meditative postures and finding that comfortable but attentive place where we have our feet firmly planted on the floor. At least we can do this physically during these moments, even if we don't normally feel like they are emotionally. Our feet are on the floor, and let us just kind of give our bodies a little bit of a shake and a letting go, and start to take inventory of all the places that normally hold our attention, hold our anxiety, hold our stress. So I know I'm always helped by starting at the top with my head and my releasing my jaw, my neck, even rolling it about a bit. We might scrunch up our shoulders really tightly and let them go. It's a good technique for release. I normally have my hands resting in my lap, but unclenched as they tend often to be. And we let go of our stomachs and the organs around them that we tend to hold on to, and our legs and our knees, and we might just shake them back and forth and tap our feet up and down and wiggle our toes. I'm already having my eyes closed. Invite you to do the same if you haven't yet, or just to gaze in an unfocused way. And if all of this has induced yawning, that's because it's a release. That's because when we hold ourselves so tightly, we don't necessarily yawn. That's a good thing. Yawning in preparation for meditation is a good thing. Oh, I will learn 1 week not to take care of this. I'm so sorry. So, just reviewing for a second, making sure we are in place. Let us take that good breath. And just luxuriate in the inhalation. Let us hold on to it. And then let it go. Let us inhale. And let it go. And if we can allow that breath to reach to all the extremities, tips of our fingers, the tops of our heads, the toes of our feet. That image may help you take the breath just so deeply and fully and completely. And we let it go. And it might be nice to inhale with the breath, the thought that whatever our brains are doing is just fine. Whatever they are doing right now is healthy and fine and normal. And let us breathe out any residual concerns, anxieties. If they need attending to, they will return when we are completed, when we are finished here. And if they don't, hopefully they will just float away. I think it can be helpful to hold that breath inside before we let it go. We can also just breathe in and breathe out. There's nothing wrong with that, but there's something satisfying about holding that breath inside. And enjoying it before we let it go again. We may want to go back and release parts of our body that we can now feel are holding tension. Maybe our lower backs. I invite you to continue to breathe even as I share the last major point that she made and that I found helpful is that we are not returning to normal ever. And it was probably short-sighted to think that we ever could. Normal is always changing, even when there is no COVID to accelerate the process. There will eventually be what we call a new normal, a term I'm not particularly fond of, but it's useful. We will eventually accommodate to a new normal, but we cannot know now what that will be when it arrives. What we do know is that if we are yearning for the return of what we had, it will not happen. She made that very clear. In many ways, it cannot happen because we have changed. The people around us have changed, and the world has changed. So when we think about the future, some of the questions we might be asking would include, will masking in public places and on public transportation become normalized? Are the days of social hugging and kissing over? So many people miss that spontaneous touch. Will distancing become a permanent part of seating in certain venues? Will working from home become an accepted option, perhaps in tandem with some days in the office? Will worship services remain both online and in person? While we cannot possibly know what the future, even a close future, will look like, I find it helpful to manage my expectations and to try to adopt an attitude of curiosity as to what will come, rather than continuing to feel disappointment in what we no longer have or can expect to have. That is the meditative way, to adopt a spirit of curiosity not judgment, not disappointment, not negativity, not even positivity for certain, but curiosity. What will come? What will it look like? How will I feel about it? With this realization and perhaps helpful dose of reality, let us spend a few more minutes together, breathing our current reality and letting go for the moment of both the normal past we have yearned for and the uncharted normal that awaits us. So, hopefully some of you have not released the meditative posture or attitude. And if you have, we can readopt it fairly quickly. To breathe deeply, fully, attentively. Part of the purpose of this meditation, this reflection, is to accept what is our reality right here, right now, in this moment. Because that's how reality happens, minute by minute, as we live it. And if we can be comforted that we deal with reality as it comes to us, then whatever awaits us is not so anxiety provoking. The anxiety comes from the anticipation, the not knowing. But in reality, every minute becomes our lives, our new reality, our present reality. The more we can live right here and right now, the easier we will feel about all the unknowns. I invite you to continue to breathe and to concentrate on the breathing in and then out. But to formally conclude our time together and hopefully to provide a bit of inspiration, I would share with you this poem by John O'Donohue. I may have shared it with you in the past. It is entitled For a New Beginning. In out-of-the-way places of the heart, where your thoughts never think to wander, this beginning has been quietly forming, waiting until you were ready to emerge. For a long time, it has watched your desire, feeling the emptiness growing inside you, noticing how you willed yourself on, still unable to leave what you had outgrown. It watched you play with the seduction of safety and the gray promises that sameness whispered, heard the waves of turmoil rise and relent, wondered, would you always live like this? Then the delight, when your courage kindled and out you stepped onto new ground, your eyes young again with energy and dream, a path of plenitude opening before you. Though your destination is not yet clear, you can trust the promise of this opening. Unfurl yourself into the grace of beginning that is at one with your life's desire. Awaken your spirit to adventure. Hold nothing back. Learn to find ease in risk. Soon you will be home, in a new rhythm, for your soul senses the world that awaits you. May this attitude of generosity and of embracing what we are, who we are, where we are, and going forward be part of your week's experience. I look forward to seeing you next time. And I wish you health and strength in the meantime. God bless. Take care.